everybody, and welcome to live questions and answers with Magdalena. I'm just gonna do a quick sound check to make sure that I'm using my phone. Yes, I am, so that should be good. Awesome. Welcome everybody. And is it like normal that everything is every woman, like before we go live, we're gonna like check our hair and all of that good stuff, right? I do that too. So yeah, so I've decided I kind of improvise on the topics, and to be honest with you, if you feel like you want to request for a specific topic for me to talk about, I'll be more than happy to listen. And so one of the things that came up was about weight. I think it's one of the most frequent questions that we get from you guys. It's about, why is it that I'm doing so many things that are right, and yet I can't lose weight? And that's a really good question. It's a very frustrating condition to deal with, right? Because I know that many of you here are not eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast, you're not drinking diet soda, you take care of yourself and you go to yoga and you exercise. And so I think that's the kind of community that, that Hormones Balance attracts. And so it's even more frustrating when you're doing so many good things, and yet the weight is just holding on. Like the last 10 pounds, the last 20 pounds, you might have lost weight in the past and it just isn't working anymore. And so I want to talk about it because, weight gain and weight loss is not a superficial issue only. I think it is a sign of there is something else going on in the body. And I want to talk about what are some of the potential causes of all of that. And by the way, introduce yourself, tell me where you're from, and what have you done in the past? In short, don't write long stuff, because then, it shows up on my phone and it's kind of like scrolling down, and then I can't really see all the comments. I just wouldn't have the time, it disappears, right? So make a quick comment. Tell me, what have you done? If weight issue is your issue, what have you done to address that, to lose some pounds? What has worked, what hasn't worked? So, I know many of you have tried different diets. I think that's the kind of thing that has been happening overall in pretty much in most health communities today, where, for the past 20, 30 years, I think we've been exposed to a lot of them, right? Atkins, and then, we went to the South Beach diet, and gosh, and even today, there's so many things I can think about, right? GAPS, maybe the special carbohydrate diet, also known as SCD. Maybe you've gone paleo, maybe you've gone even deeper, like AIP, paleo for autoimmunity, and maybe you've just done the elimination diet, right? Maybe you've done a lot of different fasts before, or perhaps you've done a lot of different supplements and shakes and powders, and or to follow the zone diet or whatever, right? And the thing that I find is that maybe you've done Weight Watchers, right? That's another one that I think it's probably a little bit passé now, but people still do it, and even Oprah acknowledged them, which I think it's not really a protocol I would recommend to anyone who wants to be healthy and lose weight on a sustainable basis. So the reason why I think these diets are there is because the authors a lot of times have done something that worked for them or selective group of people, and so they write a book and then say, well, it's going to work for everybody, right? And what I have found is that not always is the case, because weight is a sign of an inflammation that goes on in the body, and their body stores fat, and none of the diet, so to speak, or approaches, or whether it's or organizations like Weight Watchers, and I'm just picking Weight Watchers, but I'm not harping just on them, I'm talking about anybody for that matter, is a question of why is it not working? And I think the reason why it's not working is because a lot of people have different reasons why they're not losing weight, and I don't see one single program, diet, or organization that addresses every single one of them. Everybody has a preferred angle. And there's a sense of certainty that they sell these programs, saying, if you do this, you're going to lose weight. If you do this, you're going to lose weight. I tend not to do weight loss programs because I see weight loss as a great benefit from just restoring the balance in your body. That's why the name of my business is Hormones Balance. But I just don't focus. I'm not only going to talk about hormones today because hormones are not the only thing that can cause weight gain or resistance to weight loss. So there's a lot of other stuff, and I want to talk about those. So yeah, so tell me where you're from. I don't see any comments coming in yet. Where are you logging in from? And what have you done so far to lose some weight, and what has worked, what hasn't worked? One of the things I want to offer you is a thought and a way of looking at weight loss, because I know this can be incredibly frustrating. It can add on to stress. I'm going to talk about stress in just a second. And you're like, ooh, I'm doing all the right things. Why am I not losing weight? This is crazy, right? It's like, what's going on? The whole world is conspiring against me. You might be going for a run with your friend and she loses like, 10 pounds in 3 weeks, and you lose 2 pounds, right? And I see these kind of things all the time. So if I could just offer you one reframe or one question you can ask yourself, it will be this. Think of it as your body is in a state of an imbalance. That's why you're holding on to weight. There's no other reason why you're holding on to weight. There is a sense of an imbalance that's happening. And the question is, what is that imbalance? And so can I ask you to kind of watch yourself like a movie? If you can just step out and see yourself like watching yourself in a movie. And if you're your body and you ask yourself, what do you need from me to, sorry, there's a comment that came in, so I lost my train of thought. If you were your body and your body was asking you, I need your help, can you help me to get rebalanced? Can you feel the sense of energy that shifts with that, where it shifts to a space of much more forgiveness and understanding and kindness to yourself, and approaching this from that place of discovery, saying, you know what, I'm going to listen to this broadcast that Magdalena is doing, and I'm going to, see what else is missing in my protocol that I'm not doing yet that could be inhibiting my weight loss possibilities, right? So just ask yourself, if your body was to ask you what help it needs from you, what would you say? How can you help your body to get to the place that you want? So, the biggest thing that comes up for me when it comes to, I'm going to talk about 4 causes, and I'll tell you what they are. Hormonal, I've got the written out. Hormonal, then I'm going to talk about food intolerances and gut issues. Number 3, sluggish liver, and number 4, infections. And every one of these 4 groups of potential causes have one thing in common, and that's causing a great sense of inflammation in the body. Inflammation is like the sense of fire that happens on a cellular level. You have a great level of inflammation when you, for example, cut yourself, right? You've got a bruise, you hit it, there's a bruise that gets formed, or when you have a cut, right? There's heat around, there is swelling, and there's pain, and the reason why all of that happens is because there's a great amount of inflammation your body creates to protect that area and to create healing. All the white cells get mobilized to go into that place and start healing your wound. That's what happens that's the inflammation that we know, and that's in a form of healing. The inflammation I'm talking about is the same little fire, but it happens on a very minuscule level, and it happens on a cellular level. And there's various things that can contribute towards the inflammation. And as long as you have that fire going on in your body, you're not gonna lose that weight, okay? Or you have to work really hard, like starve yourself and do, fast for 14 days of not eating anything to lose those pounds you want. But that's not a sustainable way of losing weight. I'm not going to talk to you about things like limiting your diet to 500 calories a day. And, obviously not, because, you and I know this is not going to last, right? It's going to work initially, and then you're going to freak out. And then 2 months later, you're going to start binging on food because your body is so starved for nutrients. Any kind of deprivation always has some kind of after effect, right? So let's talk about hormones, since this is what I do. And, I'm not going to give you solutions to every one of them, just because I'm trying to keep this call within 40 to 45 minutes. And if I cover so I want to give you a bigger picture. If there are specific questions that you have, post it in the video down below, and then we can get to it later. What I typically do is when I can get to your questions in this episode, then I'll take those questions and answer them the following week, right? So if you're watching it on replay, that's the same thing applies. Just post it and I'll get to it. My team consolidates those questions, I print them out, and then I get ready for this call. So almost 40 of you are watching this broadcast right now. Tell me where you're from, where you're dialing in from, and is weight loss something that's been bothering you? Keep it really short, because that's one of the issues with with this technology is that the comments appear and then they disappear really quickly. So I have to have the time to read them. So there are, I see 4 major hormonal imbalances that can really cause weight loss resistance. And the first one is, the very common one, is thyroid. When women come to me and say, I just out of the blue, I started putting on weight like never before, and I'm doing the same things that I did before, and I've been ramped up exercising, and instead of losing weight, I'm putting on weight. And so typically that is oftentimes the cause of a thyroid. Thyroid is highly underdiagnosed. Millions of women go undiagnosed every year and being told that it's change their diet and go home and exercise more, kind of a thing, right? And so the typical symptoms of thyroid, you probably know, is weight gain that is unexplained, a lot of fatigue, your hair starts coming out, a lot of dry skin, anxiety, depression, not feeling yourself anymore. Those are some of the symptoms. And oftentimes it's due to Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And so I talk a lot about, if you have any of those symptoms, what I'll suggest you do, go to thyroiddietcoach.com. That's my thyroid website, thyroiddietcoach.com, and get the starter kit and educate yourself on what are this. So Gail is saying she's tried every diet, turned 55, gained 30 pounds, and not able to lose any pounds. So Gail, if you could tell me by the end of this call, what have you learned that you haven't tried yet? Because I can tell you right now that you haven't tried everything yet, I'm pretty sure. So that's about thyroid. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about solutions just because I don't have the time for it today, but I can point you to different resources so you're going to do your homework and tell me next week how things have been for you. What have you discovered? The second thing that I see a lot of times is insulin resistance that can cause weight gain that's just crazy. An interesting thing about insulin resistance is that you tend to store fat around your belly, right? It's fascinating that fat gets distributed in different body parts depending on the kind of hormonal imbalance you have. So for example, estrogen dominance, I'm going to talk about in a second, it's around your hips and your thighs, and a lot of cellulite can be estrogen dominance. When it comes to insulin resistance is the tummy, and when it comes to adrenals, it's just overall weight and kind of puffiness all around the body. We'll talk about adrenals in a second. So insulin resistance is body fat around there. Your sugar levels go up. You feel tired after a meal. You can eat even after having a full meal. Those are some of the symptoms. Really simple test to order your blood levels. So not just glucose, but also I would recommend to do the HA1C, hemoglobin A1C. That's a great marker as well if you suspect you're having sugar issues and history of diabetes, and you have not maybe been eating the best. And so in the past, maybe now, yes, but things do have an impact from the past. So that's another one, that insulin resistance means that, as the word implies, your cells are resisting insulin from coming in. And insulin brings in glucose. Insulin is like a key that opens up the key for the glucose to come into the cell to give you energy, to give you just a healthy self. And when you have the resistance on a cellular level, that glucose floats around your whole body and it needs to be deposited somewhere. So instead of damaging your organs, it still will, but to minimize the damage to the organs, it gets deposited in the fat cells because that's the place that it's safer for the body, where it doesn't damage your organs as much. Third one is estrogen dominance, right? So, and I talked a lot about estrogen dominance in the previous episodes, and so I'm not going to repeat too much about it, how it happens, what it is. Symptoms typically include things like PMS, fibroids, having lumps in your breasts, right? Of course, breast cancer. I talked a lot about it in October. By the way, my assistant and Candy, who's managing the social media and the community here, we're gonna be putting all the episodes that I've done, all the live calls, on a website, so you can always go back to them instead of, otherwise you have to scroll down and down and down my Facebook page, which we post so much on it. So instead, we're just gonna have it consolidated on one page. And I hope this is helpful for you, so that way you can pull out the episodes from before really, really quickly. Is that helpful? Would that be something that will help you get the information quicker? So that's estrogen dominance, right? And then the fourth reason, which is a huge one and very underestimated, and I know a lot of women are in a lot of denial about this, and that is adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue is when you have basically high cortisol levels or low cortisol levels. And a lot of people think like, I don't have a super stressful job. Okay, great, got it. A lot of people are saying yes, awesome, we'll post that. A lot of, people say like, oh, I don't have a stressful job. And, I just, I go through the motions in life, and things are just busy all the time. And there are kids and family issues and money issues, and sometimes you can't really take away stress from your life, but you can reframe it. You can look at it differently. You can meditate on it. You can bring in a lot of really, really pleasurable things to your life that gives you oxytocin release. Things like sex, orgasm, hugging a lover, your husband or somebody you love, getting a pet, hugging a child, going for a massage, going to a hot spa, a hot tub, right, to a spa. All of those things will be releasing oxytocin, which is there to mitigate high levels of cortisol. But cortisol is a stress hormone that's highly inflammatory. So we talked about the sense of inflammation that's created in the body. That's what can be causing it. And I want to give you an example of somebody I've worked with in New York City. She used to work for a nonprofit. And for those of you who have ever worked on a nonprofit, she was the finance manager in a nonprofit. And nonprofits are crazy. I mean, there's a bunch of people who are very idealistic about things, and they are super passionate about the topic, but they also oftentimes lack the sense of discipline and accountability for things and kind of organization. They're shooting all over the place. And anyway, that was the nonprofit she worked at. And she was like the only person who was trying to organize everyone. And that came at a huge cost. She would leave her house at 7:30 in the morning, and she would not come home until 9 p.m., right? And the commute itself from Brooklyn to the city was taking her an hour each way. So imagine, right? It's 2 hours a day on being on the road. And, and I remember this case because she was one of the hardest clients I ever had to deal with, because she kept coming, we had these appointments, and she was kind of doing what I asked her to do. And her diet was pretty clean. She was doing the things we've agreed on, and her digestion seemed to be working better. But the problem was that she was so wound up through the work, through all the problems that they were having. Nonprofits depend on fundraising, right? So, they were not raising funds. And so the horrendous stress that she was accumulating was so visible. Every time she come into my house, I could feel like that sense of like this black energy just enwrapping me, right? Because of all her stuff. And, funny enough, actually, that nonprofit ran out of money and they closed it down. And so she had to, she ended up actually getting a job really quickly somewhere else, got out of the nonprofit world. And then she had some savings for a while. So she took 2 months off, and then she started working. And I have to tell you, within, I worked with her for 6 months or so. She had significant weight that she just couldn't lose. And then when she changed her job, took the 2 months off, started a much more settled and grounding job, she started losing these pounds really, really quickly. And because she was living in a neighborhood, I kept seeing her around the park, and I remember seeing her, and she looked just absolutely fabulous. And she said to me, Cecilia, the only thing really that she had changed was the sense of stress. So, you have to ask yourself, like, if there is a lot of stress going on in your life, right? and you have symptoms of adrenal fatigue, which is things like, apart from their weight loss resistance, which can be due to also so many things, is also things like, getting off of the sofa feeling lightheaded, craving salt, craving sugar, getting emotional for no reason, waking up in the middle of the night, right, with nightmares, or just waking up for no reason, having dark circles under your eyes, right? Those are some of the symptoms of adrenal fatigue. And there's more. If you go to hormonesbalance.com/quiz, then actually, that's a really great place to get started in case you're not sure which hormonal imbalance you have. Is just go there, hormonesbalance.com/quiz. I'll post the link on top of the video as well later. And you'll see the difference. And you'll see what could be the cause of your adrenal fatigue. I'm gonna just take a quick drink. By the way, I'm drinking Tulsi tea. I actually finished it now. I always make a little. It doesn't look terribly appealing right now because it's all just the leaves. But this is basically the white stuff that you see here. This was rose. This was rose petals. So what I do is I do Tulsi, which is an adaptogen, great for the adrenals to kind of ground you and get the day started in a grounded way. And then I use rose petals because they're so tasty and they're just so full of love. And then I use raspberry leaf, which is a very well-known women's tonic. So a really great tea to start the day. Yum. So, and one more thing I want to just mention about adrenals is that if you have trauma from the past, that's another thing I've experienced with clients who, for example, had alcoholic parents who never really sought therapy to deal with the trauma that they experienced of going through it. There is a lot of stuff that goes on that will constantly be releasing adrenal cortisol on a regular basis, more so that you're conscious. It can be going on a subconscious level. And so resolving past trauma, resolving the stress right now that's going on, or looking at it differently, reframing it, or bringing in those things that really make you happy. I really see adrenals as being one of the big reasons why we're holding on to weight. So as you can see, it doesn't have to be all diet. It can also be, the kind of emotional stress. It can be spiritual stress. Sometimes people have no sense of purpose. I don't work in that space very much, but I have a lot of friends in the industry, and I have colleagues who work with trauma and finding purpose and self-discovery and stuff like that. And they always say that the health of a person can turn 180 degrees when they find a sense of purpose, when they find themselves, right? So anyway, so that's much on that. So those are the 5 things: thyroid, insulin resistance, adrenals, and estrogen dominance. Sorry, so that's 4. And adrenals is both high adrenals and low adrenals I'm talking about here, right? So let's move on to the next one, which is, many of you have mentioned here about food intolerances and gut issues, and you want to learn how to do that, right? So yeah, food intolerance, as much as I talked about this concept last week about eating well versus eating right can be 2 very different things, right? There are certain food culprits that I think are very well known and documented by now to be highly inflammatory. Things like gluten, dairy, corn, nightshade vegetables for some people, unfortunately, soy, right? Can be really a trigger for a lot of people. And I would say definitely that when it comes to sugar, gluten, and dairy, those are like no-brainers, and having excess of any of those 3 all the time, huge cause of inflammation. Corn for some people, eggs for some people. And so to really find out, I cannot have anything but bean flour, no milk, sugars, fermentable foods, most sugars, Patty's saying. I'm going to talk about that, Patty, in a second, about infection. So just hang in there and we'll get there. So, when it comes to food intolerances, so those things that those are no-brainers, and I think you're going to just take them out for a period of at least 2 weeks. I like to do it maybe for 3 to 4 weeks with most people. And in fact, you might start feeling so much better when you remove these foods. Then you're like, I'm just going to keep going. Like 2 weeks, I feel like my body's just beginning to cleanse. I'm going to keep going with this a little bit longer. I talk about how to do the elimination diet at the cookingforbalance.com. It's a free workshop on how to use food to rebalance your hormones. So just log in there. I'll post the link up above, cookingforbalance.com. I'll go into more detail on how to do the elimination diet. So watch that there. But one of the interesting things about, when it comes to to finding out what is the food that is really causing a problem is actually weight fluctuations for some people. So let me give you an example how to do this. You basically, let's just say you did the elimination diet for 4 weeks, right? You cut all the food culprits that I talked about, and you journal, because through journaling, you discover a lot of things. The elimination diet takes out 5 foods, but it could be that you're having a problem with nuts, for example, or with lemon, or with sauerkraut, which I'm not ruling out in the elimination diet. But when you start journaling, you go like, every time I have sauerkraut, I'm like breaking out in hives. Every time I have nuts, I'm getting itchy, right? So, those are signs that these foods are inflammatory, right? And you want to then go deeper into eliminating even more foods until you really figure out what are your safe foods, right? So the interesting thing is when you complete the elimination diet and then you're reintroducing, Julie's asking about sugar cravings. I'm going to talk about that under infections in just a second, Julie. So when you reintroduce these foods, what happens is there's an interesting inflammatory response if you have a problem with that food, and that is weight gain. So this is what you can do. When you completed the elimination diet for 4 weeks, then you reintroduce these foods 3 days each at a time, right? So let's just say that in that morning when you're going to be reintroducing, let's just say take eggs, right? Or take dairy. Let's just take eggs as an example. You weigh yourself. Let's just say you're 150 pounds, right? So you write it down, 150 pounds. And then eat that food, right? And then the following day, so you're going to be eating eggs the whole day, 3-4 eggs on that day to test what's happening. The next morning, weigh yourself again and see what happens. And a lot of times, I've seen people putting on as much as 4 pounds within a day from highly inflammatory foods like dairy or from gluten. Those are like the 2 biggest culprits. But that happens. And so that's why I said at the beginning, the weight gain can be an inflammatory response to a certain food. So that's a great way of knowing. And when that's when you know, right? Like that food is, and most likely you're going to have other symptoms, not just weight gain, but you're also going to have like feeling off or getting pimples popping out or getting a headache or sleeping poorly. Food sensitivities can have so many different faces. It's actually quite mind-boggling, right? So that's about food intolerances. And, and with that, let me just move on maybe to the next one and talk about infections, because I see more and more people having a lot of food sensitivities, right? And, and so it's like somebody wrote here just now, I'm only down to be eating only this number of foods. I had to cut out everything. And that's pretty tragic, right? Because you're like, wow, that's so limiting. And food is such a great source of joy for us and social contact with the rest of the world and our own family. And that's when it creates bonds and communications with others. And when you suddenly cut this out and you go out and you're like, oh, I'm just going to have lettuce with a drip of olive oil. I get it. It's just that's not life, right? That's not a complete life. So one of the things that I have seen is that when somebody has a lot of food intolerances, it's oftentimes because of different infections that are happening in the gut. And until and unless you eliminate those infections, things ain't gonna change. You're gonna have those food sensitivities in growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And elimination itself helps to calm down the fire a little bit, for sure. But it's not going to take away the problem completely. It's not going to, so to speak, clean the house out, right? So what do I mean by infections? There's various forms of infections: viral infections, bacterial infections, parasitic infections, and yeast infections. Let me start off with yeast infections, since somebody, I think it was Julie just now, posted, well, how do I stop my food cravings, right? And it sounded from her question as if it was like this uncontrollable monster that just takes over her life and she has no say in this whole crazy journey, this crazy ride. So oftentimes I see when somebody's having huge yeast or sugar cravings, it is because of a presence of yeast, or specifically something called candida, many of you I'm sure have heard of it before, where candida can be calling for its own food. And so candida lives on yeast. It needs sugar, sorry, lives on sugar. And what happens is that sugar is basically there to feed it. So oftentimes we crave things when the things that we actually need, like for example, why do you need chocolate? Because most likely it's because you are deficient of magnesium. People crave salty foods. That could be because you're minerally deficient or because you have adrenal problems, and sugar and salt is there to bring up your blood sugar levels, and that helps the adrenals. So so there's reasons why we crave things. Don't push cravings away. I think it's a fascinating topic on cravings. One day I want to do maybe a segment just on talking about different food cravings and what they mean. Sugar cravings, candida, is a yeast infection that happens in the small intestine, can be also in the large intestine, can also be on your skin and our reproductive organs in women. And so, it's a huge topic on how to deal with candida. I'm not going to be talking about it here, but I want to point you to a couple of places. Number one is, how do you get diagnosed? And number two, what do you do about it? So the first thing is, you imagine, actually I'm going to take this. So imagine like this is, you basically, to test for candida, you can do this at home. You take a glass of water and you put this by your bedside. When you wake up tomorrow morning, make sure that the day before you do not eat any dairy products, right? No dairy whatsoever. The next morning when you wake up, you have this glass of water, preferably use a smaller one, and you basically build up a nice bowl of spit, right? First thing in the morning, you just get up before drinking anything, before eating anything, and you spit into the glass. And there's three potential there are three things that could happen, right? The first thing is that the saliva just floats on top, and that's great. And that basically means you don't have candida. That's awesome. The second possibility is that the saliva starts developing tentacles, and you're gonna see like these legs down the glass, right? And that's a clear sign that there is candida happening. The worst case is when the saliva drops all the way to the bottom of the glass, right here, just plunks down, and that just shows you that there is a lot of yeast in the saliva. A lot of people discredit that test, but I don't have an agenda for promoting certain things or not promoting them. I just find it really, really accurate and I've worked with enough people to say that this thing actually really works, including myself, including my partner, and over 1,000 women I used to work on the private sessions, which I don't do anymore, but that's something that I've certainly learned. Really, really accurate. So do that. That will confirm whether you have candida or not. And the second thing is, if you have candida, then what I would recommend you do to and really understand what's going on is go into cookingforbalance.com, do the workshop, and decide for yourself if you want to go deeper with us into the full program, where I teach about how do you reverse candida with food, supplements, and some topical stuff like using castor oil packs and etc. We even have recipes and meal plans specifically for candida, so it really helps you kick it off. And sometimes for those of you who've done, I'm curious here, who has done a candida cleanse before? Who's been diagnosed with candida? You diagnosed yourself because symptoms are so clear. By the way, candida is a really tricky one because, first of all, it doesn't get diagnosed very easily. And a lot of, like for example, stool tests will look at the large intestine. If you don't have candida there, it will say it's a negative, which is false, because it can be living in your small intestine. There are blood tests, but there are different antibodies you can test for. It's kind of a complex. What is the link to the candida diet again? It's not a link to a candida diet, Norleen. It's just I was mentioning that it's a workshop that you can listen to, cookingforbalance.com. So cookingforbalance.com, it leads on to a full program. If you want to join the program, it's called Cooking for Balance, then think about that. Then that's what I talk about, candida solutions. So that's about yeast. And one of the things that in the workshop, when you do the Cooking for Balance workshop, you hear me talk about there are special bonuses I'm giving away. One of the bonuses, it's a sheet that I put together for people who are that I put together with my doctor when I was going through Candida, that has got supplements in it and herbs and RX stuff, so prescription stuff, if for some people that will be needed, or you might want to go down that path. So you have a lot of different options on how to address it, of course, in combination with a good diet. So that's about yeast. And I have to tell you, Candida, I can't tell you how much damage it can create in your body. It's so incredibly scary, but manageable. Like, it's a condition that you can manage. It's not a mysterious thing. It's not cancer, you know, although there is a connection between Candida and cancer, by the way. So you might have seen research that shows women with a lot of sugar consumption have a higher chances of cancers, of course, because sugar is making your body very acidic, creates a perfect environment for cancer to thrive. Cancer also lives on sugar, right? And in combination with Candida, you're having these uncontrollable cravings because Candida is there, because it needs to live on something. Hello, right? So that's about yeast. And so, you know, symptoms, yeah, so just to finish it off, Candida symptoms are so tricky because I've seen everything from developing skin issues, like even eczema and, you know, thrush and vaginal stuff going on, discharges, itchiness down there, painful sacs, to digestive issues, obviously, food intolerances, being bloated all the time, having a tummy that just wouldn't, like tummy fat that just wouldn't go away. Obviously cravings, we talked about it. You know, another symptom is having a white tongue coating on, if first thing in the morning when you stick your tongue out, is you got a white coating. That could be other possibilities why that is so, but Candida is could be one of the big reasons. In a lot of women having, you know, sinus infections, itchy ears, ringing in the ears, tinnitus, for example, is one of the main causes is yeast infections. Isn't that fascinating? So the list goes on, and, you know, I mean, even I've seen people having depression and anxiety going away when they address their Candida problems. So you really cannot stay healthy when you have Candida. And, you know, so for example, these food cravings, you know, for sugar, how can you lose weight when you got all that food cravings? And then when you resist them, you can resist them for so long. And then it just drives you crazy, right? For like, how long can you be resisting a monster? It doesn't quite work that way. So the other infection I want to talk about is parasites, because I have seen many people who go through parasite cleanses and then boom, they come out on the other hand with no depression, with no anxiety, weight just going down, you know, just like clarity of mind, like their foggy brain disappears. I mean, they are a different person altogether. Now you're probably wondering, why is she talking about parasites here? Like, I haven't been to Africa or Asia, and, you know, I'm a clean person, and by no means am I attacking you and saying that that is not the case. The interesting thing about parasites is that, depending on who you ask, but many sources quote saying 70% of people in the United States have parasites at one point in their lives. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I've had it numerous times. Part of the reasons why I think I keep getting them back, especially in times of stress or when I travel and stuff within the United States, not even outside of that, is that I tend to have a very low stomach acid. And when you do not have sufficient stomach acid, these parasites can go through really easy. Sufficient stomach acid is like the first line of defense of killing these little buggers so they don't get down to your large intestine where they love to live and thrive. So I have to tell you, I've had clients after clients after clients who never left the United States and had major parasites. As women, I think we tend to have a lot of problems with stomach acid, and so I would definitely encourage you to do a test. Knowing you're gonna test for parasites, there isn't like a set of symptoms. The symptoms are so wide and broad that it's really it's impossible to say you got a parasite unless you have like pretty clear stuff like itching anus, you know, or you see stuff coming out, you know, in the bathroom. Okay, then you know. But I've had parasites before which were completely not systematic, didn't manifest in any way except that I had horrendous candida I couldn't beat. And the minute I took care of the parasite, the immune system got a break, the inflammation subsided, and that's when the candida went away. So do a test, and you know, the good news is you can test it yourself. You can order that from directlabs.com. The lab that I really like is called Doctor's Data. The 3-time test, that means you do it over a period of 3 days. Doctor's Data. You can find it there on Direct Labs. I think Direct Labs, you can buy it from anywhere around the United States except for, I think it was New York, Maryland, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I think those are the states that can't order. The rest of the United States, you can order yourself, so you don't have to run to a doctor. A lot of times people say, hey, I've done a parasite test, it came back negative. I say, do not rely on that, especially if it's a lab that was like a hospital lab. I can tell you right away that these labs are infamously inaccurate, and they only test for like 10, 12 different parasites when there's actually over 300 different species of parasites. So you've got to get the labs done properly. So that's parasitic infections. Why am I talking about it? Is because these little critters can create horrendous inflammation in the body. For various reasons. Number one is they steal your food. So all the nutrients that we should be putting in our body, these little guys are eating it up. But the second biggest problem is that they poop. And their poop is highly inflammatory and toxic for us. And then you're taxing your liver and having to get rid of that. And, you know, I can't tell you, like I mentioned to you, you know, I just got rid of parasites and my candida went away, right? Like how much of a burden was the parasite on my immune system to be able to clear candida naturally. And this is like, needless to say, I was on so many supplements, so many herbs, and my diet was absolutely pristine. Not a gram of sugar, not even root vegetables, none of the fruits, nothing. And I was still having symptoms. So parasites can be hugely inflammatory. Get tested, get that out. The next thing I want to talk about is bacterial infections. So bacterial infections, you know, in the gut, there can be many of them. The things that I see a lot of people is H. pylori, overgrowth of H. pylori. We need a little bit of it, but it's just a matter of balance, not too much. H. pylori often grows when we have, again, low stomach acid. That can be highly inflammatory. And another one that is really quite scary is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's the one that somebody who is eating any almost kind of food, and zucchinis are pretty low inflammatory, right? And kind of like safe foods, I call it, right? I don't really know many people who have a problem with zucchinis. I have seen, though, people with SIBO who would have a carrot or zucchini or lettuce or those safe foods, and they will get horrendous impact. They'll get a lot of inflammation, a lot of bloating in the tummy. But then they eat it the following day, and the symptoms are not the same. Like, they don't get any symptoms, right? And so that inconsistency of symptoms oftentimes shows us there is either parasites or bacterial infections that are going on that can be causing that. So how do you test for SIBO? It's a little bit more complex. I'm not going to spend time on it, but you can go to a great resource I always recommend called SIBOinfo.com. SIBOinfo.com. Dr. Seiberker is running that site, and she talks about testing, symptoms. If you feel like everything you're eating, you're reacting to, your tummy is always bloated, you've got a lot of digestive issues going on, even if you're keeping a clean diet, that's something that needs to be looked into. And to be honest with you, SIBO is great in terms of changing your diet. Diet becomes a supplementary thing, but really SIBO needs to be knocked out with either natural antibiotics or with prescription antibiotics, because it is quite a serious infection, and diet alone is not going to help here. So again, kind of goes back to the inflammation, right? That creates a huge amount of inflammation, struggle for the body, not to mention these kind of digestive issues also create constant cortisol release. How do you spell that? SIBO, S-I-B-O, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And if you're not catching this live, then you can watch it on replay and then just fast forward to those sections. Yeah, so SIBO, another thing that creates it, so I was just mentioning creating a lot of inflammation, but also when you are so struggling with your digestion, there is also a cortisol release, right? So it's a double whammy. On one hand, you got an infection, but on the other hand, you also have this high cortisol release so that the body, because the body sees these infections as stress as well. So this is, it has to deal with it. And that's how it can contribute towards inflammation, and that can contribute towards your weight gain. Last thing I want to just mention are viral infections. So anything from shingles, the Epstein-Barr virus, which is also known as mono, HPV. I mean, 70% of women who are sexually active in the United States have HPV at some point in their lives. The question is, are you clearing it or not, right? Oftentimes we get diagnosed with HPV, and then you can basically wait for, I think they'll tell you 6 months to see whether your body can clear it. If your immune system is functioning well, if you're eating well, your gut is not compromised, you're not having a horrendous amount of stress, your immune system, basically, what I'm saying is functioning pretty, good frequency, then you should be able to clear out HPV naturally. If you're not, that is a sign that immune system is somehow, compromised. And so the question is why? And pretty much all the things I talked about today can be bringing down the immune system. So yeah, so those are, those are some of the things. And again, you can test for viral infections and address them. One of my favorite ways, because Western medicine doesn't have any remedies for viral infections, so that right? They'll just tell you, well, you just have to live with it for a while, hopefully it clears out by itself, right? Well, I find that traditional Chinese medicine and herbalism, Western herbalism, have a lot to offer in that space. I'm especially a big fan of traditional Chinese medicine when it comes to viral infections. So if you can find somebody who's really skilled, not just in acupuncture, but also in Chinese herbs, and can do a special formula for you, that will be really, really great. So work with somebody like that, and that will help you with the viral infections. These things take a long time. They can take as long as 6 months to a year to clear out. But you know what? That's maybe how you can get your life back. So this is what I have. So just to recap everything, we talked about forming, now I got one more, sluggish liver. That's number 4 I have. When you have sluggish liver, that's our point number 4. So we had hormonal problems causing weight gain. We had food intolerances and gut issues. Then we had infections I talked about at length. And number 4 reason would be your liver. And so having a sluggish liver is no fun because it impacts pretty much every aspect of your life. The liver plays over 500 different functions. One of which is, one of the 500, is to get rid of the metabolized hormones, including estrogen. So I think I mentioned this before, if you followed me for a while, that I was in shock when I found out that I had estrogen dominance, not because I was eating highly estrogenic foods or because I'm on birth control pills or because I'm, eating crappy food. None of that is only because my liver was compromised from years ago and I had to work on the liver. And once I opened up the pathways, cleaned up my liver, that's when, things really started happening and my estrogen dominance went away. So sluggish liver, how do you know you have it? Gosh, it's like one of those, again, very confusing ones. You can go on forever about what is the symptom of a sluggish liver. It can be anything from fatigue. I take it back. There are a few clear symptoms that could be pointing to your liver. For example, sensitivity to smells. Like if somebody's wearing perfumes and you're kind of like, oh, I'm just getting a headache from this. You can't handle essential oils, even the natural good stuff, right? That could be signs that there is stuff going on with your liver. Oftentimes it really is. Sensitivity to hormone replacement therapy. So you've been put on some bioidentical hormones or whatnot, and you just even if it's topical, right? You're applying it here on your wrist, and instead of getting better, you're getting worse. They can also be due to sluggish liver. The liver's not processing things well. Sensitivity to alcohol, right? You get drunk with 3 sips of wine and 1 glass is just you flat on the ground. Having yellow whites, right, in your eyes, that could be another one. Having brown unless it's from some exposure. But other than that, if you're having brown spots around, like those circles around your hands or your face here, that could also be what's called liver marks, right? That's all like the more specific ones, but everything else from feeling tired and sluggish and moody and fatigued all the time and depressed and, you know, and yeah, all of that can be a sign of sluggish liver. I would encourage you to check out, I have a detox workshop that is a free workshop, so check it out. It's called thyroiddetox.com. It's not just for people with thyroid. Excuse me. I designed the program specifically for thyroid people because a lot of the detoxes do use a lot of raw cruciferous vegetables, which I didn't want to use because they can be taxing the thyroid. But you know, they can be okay in a cooked form. So that the detox is designed that way, but it really is for anyone. It starts off with a free workshop. You will learn a lot in that workshop. So check it out, thyroiddetox.com. I spend, you know, a lot of time there talking about the liver. And then if you feel like this is something for you, then join the full guided 12-day program on how to do that. We only not just focus on the liver, but also, sorry, not only on the food, but also on like how to apply castor oil packs on the liver and what are the essential oils to use with that and how to get better sleep and all that kind of stuff to help you detox, right? Yeah, so those are the four main things, right? So we talked about hormones, we talked about food intolerances and gut issues, infections, and then number 4 was sluggish liver. So for those of you who said you've done it all, I'm wondering, what have you not done yet from that list that I presented to you just now? What do you think you could do next that will help you with with your weight loss and just getting healthier, really? You know, sometimes we get so obsessed about weight loss, and that's all we talked about. And you know, I'll be honest with you, like even a lot of my friends in the industry, they're like, the publishers would take, they could have books or programs, and the publisher or their marketing advisors would say, put weight loss in it, it's gonna work. Like everybody wants weight loss, right? And you know, I refuse to do that because I feel like weight loss alone is just such a myopic, it's like looking at things like this. It's such a myopic way of looking at life where, you know, you can lose weight. I mean, you can go on crazy pills and lose weight, right? But I feel like it's a bigger picture to this, and that is really about rebalancing your life, rebalancing, you know, hormonally, being rebalanced nutritionally, being balanced emotionally, right? Having good relationships with yourself and other people. And that kind of creates that environment where we're naturally gonna lose weight because we are balanced. So that's one of my key things. Noreen is saying, very informative. I'm excited to try what you discussed. Norian, is it? Thank you for sharing. I'm wondering, what are you gonna do? So hey, you guys, tell me, what are you gonna be doing from that list that I presented today? I might work with one of my copywriters to actually maybe create this into my main problem, Stacey's saying, is severe constipation. I eat whole food diet. Along with severe constipation comes bloating. I'm going to try Candida test tomorrow morning, but I'm not sure if this is it. So great. So, you know, maybe that's what I'll talk about next week if you guys want. How many people here are having problem with constipation? If that is an issue, then I'll be more than happy to talk about it, because eating a whole foods diet alone is not enough for some people. You know, a lot of people start getting the bowels moving really, really quickly, but there are about 7 different things you can do for constipation. I'm out of time today, but message me, and even if you're watching this in replay, because we're going to be looking at this on Wednesday. My assistant Krista will go in here, pull out the questions that I haven't answered here, and then I'm going to be talking about it next week. So for those of you who are interested in constipation, if that is an issue for you or somebody you know who's close to you, just post down below the video, and I might do a whole segment on it, because that's a big, so thank you for sharing, because constipation can also be a big, you know, it kind of goes back to toxicity, right? And constantly impacting the liver, because when you're constipated, these toxins, instead of getting eliminated, going out, they are re-entering your bloodstream and they are re-entering the body, and then hence the toxicity is you taxing the liver again, and then the liver can do all the other functions that it should be doing. Shelly saying, yes, please do another one soon. I'm specifically talking about constipation. So for those of you, I am going to be doing, so these calls are happening every Friday at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern, and I'm going to continue doing them. December, I'm going to take time off, but I'm going to continue them throughout November and then back in January. I'm talking about specifically about constipation as a topic. So if that's something you guys want to hear about, let me know, and then I'll discuss that. Okay, everyone. I hope this will give you something to think about, put a plan together, start create a checklist, for yourself. Create a checklist. That's what I do when I do a check-in every 6 months in my health. Like, what else is missing? What else is going on? Right now I'm fighting problem with oxalates. Somehow I can't break them down. So do it like an inventory, right? And then start ticking, going like one by one, what do I need to do? It's all possible. I can tell you that. It is totally and absolutely possible. All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. I hope you get to do something really fun and releasing that oxytocin, whether it's lots of orgasms, whether it's massage, whether it's hugging a dog, a cat, a child, a lover, a husband, a best friend. All of those things can release oxytocin, which is wonderful for adrenal fatigue, which I think most of us, to some degree, have a problem in that department with stress. Okay, everyone, bye for now.